So good afternoon everyone. So we'll be starting with today's week 7 interactive live session. So if you have any doubt you can just interrupt me and ask, or you can post in the chat as well. So so previous till the previous week we have seen that we have undergone through the micro experiments, the setups required to validate and experimental setups required for those analysis and further interpreting the results from the micro experiments. Now then we have started with the surface plasmon resonance, where you can identify the interactions between the protein ligand or protein drug or various interactions you can study. We are in this week, if you have gone through the lectures thoroughly, so you could see that okay, in the surface plasmon resonance, so there is a surface where the ligands are immobilized and your analyte gets, so you pass through your analytes and then you try to find out that how much strong is the association or the dissociation and all the binding kinetics between the protein and the ligand you can understood from it. So this is so we will be looking into more deeply by try to interpret the sensograms on the immobilization and the regeneration and the different kinds of chip surfaces which are present. So I think in the lectures we have gone through that how much how different kinds of chip surfaces are there and what they help in immobilizing, how they help in immobilizing our ligands. So this is a rough sketch of how the chip surface is there. So there is your adhesive linker layer which provides you the hydrophilic surface and helps you in immobilizing the different ligands. Then the immobilization matrix and the ligand, you can see that the ligands are getting attached to that immobilization matrix. Then the gold layer where the light gets reflected for the identification of the refractive index, and there is a glass metal plastic base on the surface. So this is for the biosensor core chips. So let us go through in little bit detail about the chip surfaces so that you can get a clear understanding. So these are the typical SPR biosensor chip, which is a glass chip coated with a thin layer of chemically inert metal. So that is your gold. The chip is normally functionalized by an additional chemical protein which is attached to the chip by an adhesive linker layer. So why this is done is that you want your ligand to get immobilized on the surface, right? So now if you want your ligand to get immobilized on the surface, you need to increase, you need to make some modifications in that chemistry so that it helps you in enhancing the attachment of the ligands to the surface so that it can easily get immobilized, and it helps in the immobilization technique. So that's why you make some modifications in that. So the adhesive linker layer, what it does provides is an anchor for the hydrophilic immobilization matrix and keeps it from being washed away. So it helps in keeping the linkage and it doesn't help you in just washing away. So the thickness of this layer must be around 2 to 5 nanometer because the chip sensitivity declines significantly for layers greater than 10 nanometer in thickness. So this is because the evanescent field strength decays exponentially with the distance you are above the chip. So this is the thing. Additionally, the refractive index of the adhesive layer must be lower than that of the base because SPR biosensing relies on the difference in RI between the sensor and the medium. Higher RI at the adhesive layer would interfere with your detection. So it need to have an RI, have an layer which is lower, having a lower RI from the sensor and the medium, so that at least you can detect, otherwise it will interfere with your. Okay, so for example, the chips coated with metals Alkyl derivatives of thiols, disulfide and thioethers with hydrocarbons chains of length greater than 10 are commonly used as the adhesive layer. So what are the common things that are being used as an adhesive layer for gold is that thiols, disulfides and thioethers. So these form self-assembled monolayers on the metal surface with a high viscosity, and then bifunctional compounds that is 6-hydroxy ectadecan 1-thiol 5-15 carboxy pentadecan 1-thiol are also used to form essences and can be used to directly couple your target compounds. So for the chips coated with glass or ceramic substrates, the silent compounds. So these are all depend on your surface chemistry of what are the metal surface through which your refractive index will happen. So that and in the sensor, and on the basis of that you just coat your with that adhesive layer, so that you can increase the ligand chemistry and can help in immobilizing the ligands, and then try to find out their binding capacities with the ligands with the analytes. Then the immobilization matrix minimizes your non-specific binding of the ligand to the adhesive linker layer of hydrophilic polymers such as dextran, alginic acid, pistine, carboxyl dextran, polyglycerol, polyl-lysine, polyacrylic acid, among others. So this you can get to know about the different immobilization matrix and their different functionalities. So non-crossing brush-like structures. So as you can see in the picture, so you can see that these are long brush-like structures that helps you with that there is no non-specific binding, and non-specifically it gets attached to it. So the three dimensional of this hydrogels. So these three dimensional of their hydrogels are formed by these polymers, offers your largest surface area for ligand binding of all matrix materials. Therefore, they are commonly used for studies involving your low molecular weights. Then planar or two-dimensional immobilization matrices here are also available. These surfaces have a lower binding capacity, protein and others such as molecular weight proteins, viruses. So this SPR, I think in the lecture we have heard through that this SPR helps you in analyzing all these interactions between the proteins, viruses, and all kind of interactions. You could be able to easily able to grab through it. Okay, so here is the coupling of the ligands to the bisensor surface. So here the concept is that you need to couple your ligands to the bisensor surface for further interactions to be studied. So covalent coupling involves the formation of an actual chemical bond of the ligand to the sensor strip, and then a linker can be used to attach proteins via amide or other bonds. And then ligands may also be affinity captured based on the specific binding partners bound to the immobilization matrix. Okay, so in this table, one states that what ligands can be captured on the basis of their affinity in the immobilization matrix. Then is your, these are the most common things, which are the two is the covalent coupling and one is your affinity captured. And your less common is your ionic immobilization, which is used to couple highly charged ligands such as oligonucleotides to polyamine matrices. So oligonucleotides will have their affinity in the sense of their ionic interactions to the polyamine matrix. So polyamine and the oligonucleotides, because polyamines are your positive in nature and the oligonucleotides are because of their phosphate group, so these are negative in nature. So the negative and the positive interaction which gives due to the ionic interaction. So this method is rarely used given its reversibility and instability which changes in pH, ionic strength, and the addition of a chelating agent. So with the addition of chelating agents of the ionic strength, it can get removed. The coupling which happens cannot be so much secured and it can be removed. Then here is the adsorptive methods for attaching ligands to plastic surfaces by hydrophobic interactions or gold or silver surfaces through thiol metal bonds. So for the gold or silver thing, so you can attach with your thiol metal bands. So these are the mostly widely used methods are covalent coupling and your affinity based capture. Then your covalently coupled biosensor chips. So covalent immobilization of the ligand or target is carried out using the amide, thiol, aldehyde, carboxyl or melamine groups of the trigger. So just keep a focus on what are the different groups that have been used. So your covalent immobilization. So your affinity capture. So then the SH group of the ligands can coupling by disulfide bond formation. This is not all proteins have available thiol groups for coupling. Disulfide bond coupling can be reversed by using reducing agents to regenerate the chip surface. So as you know that if you use the disulfide bond coupling, then it can easily be just reversed by reducing that to to SH bonds, and then it can be used. Then carbohydrates and the glycoproteins can be coupled by reactions involving the CHO groups with hydrazide derivatives of carboxylated matrices, but this is not commonly done because covalent coupling involves forming a permanent covalent bond of the ligand to the synthetic surface. Only the analyte is removed after each sample injection. An advantage of covalent coupling, particularly amine coupling, is that it's straightforward and points of multiple attachment are possible, so high density surfaces can be prepared. Because a permanent bond is made and the surface is stable, our ligand orientation cannot be controlled and may result in a low or no binding of the analyte. So the ligand may be deactivated or denatured either in coupling or is a regeneration solution. Then is your capture sensor chips. Affinity capture relies on using a capturing molecule to attach the ligand to the surface of a sensor chip. To use this method, a capturing surface is first prepared either offline or inline. Ligand is then flowed over the surface and captured by affinity based approach. Example capture chips include the NINTA chip for the capture of stack proteins, a streptavidin or neutravidin chip for the bad ligands, a protein E chip for IgG. So here are the different chips that can be used for the different functionalities or the different kinds of things. Like the NINTA chip will capture your stack proteins, and a streptavidin or neutravidin chip for the biogenerated ligands, and a protein A chip for IgG antibodies. Hydrophobic chips for the capture of lipids. So hydrophobic chips you require for the capture of the lipids. So because you know that the lipids are hydrophobic in nature, and antibodies for the capture of other antibodies are the ligands. So ligand capture in a temporary bed, except for streptavidin or neutravidin binding, the ligand is usually dissolved directly in running buffer. Most capture chips can be fully regenerated between your sample injections and analyte removed. So ligand degeneration or deactivation is not common. So this can also be disadvantage. So we'll go through this. Next is a plain gold chip can be used to directly couple ligands containing natural or introduced your thiol group. Such an approach suffers from the problem of non-specific binding to the sensor chip owing to non-uniform ligand coverage which done not using blocking solutions. Okay, then is your new trends in, so these are the different new trends that are involved in your chip design and production. While a number of researchers have over the past decades tried to improve chip design, none of these newly designed chips have yet become widely used as a biosensor assay by the general display population. Use of metamaterials, those with negative refractive indexes that amplify surface passed waves as well as convert them into propagating waves. So these are some of those new chips. So I hope that you have got an idea that the mostly the immobilization that happens is your covalent, and the use of the adhesive linker layer, the immobilization matrix. Most common is your covalent coupling and the FDT capture. The less common are ionic immobilization and substitute, and there is methods like the oligonucleotides with your polyamine thing. So this can be reversed, and also the thiol group and of the disulfide linkages. Then you have capture sensor chips and the plain gold chip and the new trends what are there. Okay, so this is about the sensor chips. So now with the table, if we go through it, then what for what thing we use what for For example, carboxyl sensor is used for the immobilization of any amine group using ETC or NHS coupling, then amine sensor for any carboxyl group. So this just the vice versa, so that there is a linkage or there is an interaction, so that it gets so what why the sensor is needed, so that it can be immobilization. So the immobilization can use with the enhancement of the chemistry can be done to uh, capture the other things. So the gold non-functionalized and perfect for custom surface chemistry for the development with halo groups. Biotin streptavidin sensor kit is used for your biotin ligands, biotin for streptavidin ligands, NTA for histidine. So nickel thing will be for the histidine tags targets, then your highest tagged proteins, then protein A for IgG based antibodies because protein A has an affinity for IgGs, liposomes for hydrophobic liposomes or membrane proteins, hydrophobic for lipid monolayers. So if we go through it, I hope that hmm? Yeah, so hopefully you are yeah, so fully you are with me. So what we are, as I have told, so now we will be looking at what chips or sensors for what surfaces we can be using. Okay, so here you can get that there is a comprehensive guide through which you can understand that for what applications, what kind of sensors and what kind of chips you will be requiring. So here you can see that. So this, I think these are you are clear with it. So, but I'll just like to reiterate so that you can get a revision and you can concepts can get much more clearer. That it's a level 3 technique, in-depth information on how two biomolecules are interacting on a sensor inside of an instrument. SPR instruments are primarily used to measure binding affinity and kinetics and are becoming increasingly more affordable and accessible as researchers realize the value that SPR data can be used to their research. In a typical SPR assay, one of your binding partners must be immobilized onto the surface of the sensor. The immobilized molecule is referred to as a ligand. The sensor is pre-functionalized. So that's why the sensor is pre-functionalized, to increase the chances with a specific surface chemistry to make immobilization of a ligand easier. So the ligand here is term refers to any of the things which is immobilized onto the matrix and upon which the analyte is passed through and you try to find out the interaction. Okay, so on, so that your other binding partner referred to as the analyte can successfully interact with it and the system can output valuable data. So that's why you need a sensor which is a specific surface chemistry that will help you in your ligand to get immobilized. So before determine which sensor will be best for your chosen application, as we were going through that you need a covalent sensor which is accordingly the covalent immobilization, or you can get through the your what to say that ionic affinity based immobilization. Ionic and the adsorptive based immobilization are not so common. The reasons are there, like your oligonucleotides can get bind to your polyamide, but that can be reversed and all. So the types of SPR sensors are sensors consist of glass substrate, gold nanoparticles, and a functional chemical coating that allows the ligand to be mobilized to the sensor surface. So choosing your right sensor depends largely on the characteristics of the ligand. Is it tagged or untagged? Does it have any functional group? Is it an IgG based antibody? As we told that IgG, then the protein A has an affinity for IgG based antibodies, then that can be increase your binding of your ligands to the immobilization matrix. And also the immobilization matrix also helps in your non-specific binding onto the surface. Is it a lipid or a protein reconstituted into a liposome? Regardless of the sensor chemistry, generally inherited benefits to using SPR sensors. Reusability. So here is your list. One is your carboxyl for coupling for actively amine groups on the ligand. So carboxyl and amine, you can understand that there is an opposite charges which will help in immobilizing one on the other. Amine, so this will be carboxyl activated gold, no surface chemistry. Ligands with thiol groups. So no, since gold is a kind of an inert material, so you can have no surface chemistry is required. So you have custom development immobilization of the thiol groups are used. Then biotin streptavidin for coupling of biotin-related ligands, biotin for vice versa, NTA for his-tag proteins, protein A for coupling of the IgG based antibodies. So liposome for coupling liposome or hydrophobic. So these are the different charts. So what your coupling is that covalent coupling irreversibly. Covalent coupling is not reversible. It irreversibly attaches the ligand to the sensor surface using a standard covalent interaction. So what are the advantages? That it helps you to reduce your ligand dissociation, maintains the binding capacity for the experiments, and is compatible with most molecules, which minimizes your need for chemical generate some modifications in the ligand. So carboxyl sensors requires your EDC or NHS chemistry to activate the functional groups, and then which can bind to the ligands available amine group or the lysine residues. So well crafted activation kit. Then your amine sensors, similarly for the amine sensors also requires EDC or NHS activation to form the covalent bond between the ligand and the sensor surface. Then is your gold sensor for direct immobilization of ligands using a thiol group. The thiol group either native to the ligand spontaneously form a strong bond with the gold surface. Then your capture coupling occurs when the ligand is immobilized. The capture on the layer is non-covalent interaction with an intermediate capture molecule covalently coupled to the substrate. So here you can see that there is no ligand modification required and ligand orientation is uniform and homogeneous. Then you have the biotin of the streptavidin. So biotin and streptavidin are one of the highest affinities. So similarly for the, and then the NTA sensors which are used for the his-tag proteins. Then so an advantage to your NTA sensors is that the surface can often be used as a his-tag ligand can be treated with tinting agents like EDTA, so it can be used again. So after your finally experiment is done, so you need to regenerate your surface so that the surface can be again used for other experiments. So now there is a antibody capture. So high affinity antibodies are available for modifiers, can be used for specific ligand capture. This is done traditional carboxyl sensor immobilized antibody to the capture of the interest. And the protein A and the hydrophobic for the liposome sensors. So you can see that. So these are the your liposomes. So this helps you in the for the hydrophobic chains or for the lipids capturing all those. So this was what the sensors. I hope you all are clear about the sensors, and if you have any doubt, you can just ask that. If you have any doubt regarding the sensors or chips. I hope you are clear, right? So now going to the CM carboxymethylated tester. So CM3 sensor CM5. So which cells and viral it also give moderators in working with the serum. What is your CM series? Okay, so sensors was same CM5 CM series. So you can go here. It is a EU sensor chip or AU, which is your plain gold surface, which I think you have now. You can easily say that okay. So plain gold sensor chips will be a gold sensor chips will be used for your using the thiol groups. Then is your C1 carboxylation carboxymethylated surface, but no dis has no distal matrix. So it will be less hydrophilic than sensor chip CM5 because of your dextran. Then biotin capture keys capture biotin-related analytes. Then you have the CM series. And then real one for the lipophilic modifications. Then for nitrophyllotriacetic acid. Shift everything. So these are the different chips and the sensor surfaces that as we were discussing, like which are used or what kind of surface chemistry to increase the immobilization of the different ligands on the analytes. This gives us an excellent. So this gives us an excellent overview of surfaces and chips. I think that you are not so much any confusion of the carboxylated testran or Y and all those. Okay, so now what we will be doing is that we will be looking at the sensogram. So what responses we give, where and how we can understand. So you can see that here we can easily understood KD with the Kn and the K off with the protein. So you can see, so you can visualize it now that if it is a simple gold SPR sensor, so you will be immobilizing your protein with the help of thiol groups on that, and then you are so that protein will be termed as your ligand, and then your antibody you are showing it as an analyte, So that to find out that how much is the interaction between your antibodies and the proteins. Okay, so antibodies in bulk solution and antibodies approaching surface proteins by diffusion. So from SPR signal to sensogram. So in an deep or minimum in the reflectance spectrum, intensity of reflection versus angle of your wavelength signifies the angle or wavelength at which the light has been absorbed by the surface plasmon. So whatever is present in the surface, that will get absorbed, and there will be a shift in the reflecting spectrum. Once there is a change in the refractive index of the sensing layer followed by bond molecules causing surface structural changes. The deep would shift, indicating a change in the angle or wavelength of your resonance. So this is an example. The increase in the refractive index causes an increase in wavelength shift in your resonance. So these are SPR sensograms, a surface plasmon resonance sensogram, plot of your SPR response versus time. So this is generated from an SPR instrument. So it can reveal. So this is known as your sensogram. So it will reveal that there is a binding event between an analyte. Okay, so here analyte is your, for example, antibody, and the ligand is your protein. So and whether the binding is specific. So it contains your valuable kinetic, affinity, concentration information. So the analyte is a biomolecule being investigated, and ligand is the recognition element being immobilized on your SPR sensor. So now from SPR signal to sensogram. In an SPR experiment, a deep or minimum in the reflectance spectrum signifies the angle or wavelength at which the light has been absorbed by the plasma. Once there is a change in the refractive sensing, as I just mentioned, so the detected change in the reflected angle or wavelength is proportional to the amount of newly bound analytes at the surface due to an increase in mass. So whatever the increase in the mass is happening, so it will help you to get it reflected accordingly. So when this change in SPR response is plotted with time, so this change is plotted with time. So in the x-axis it is time, and in the y-axis is response unit. So what is the change in the reflectance? The relative SPR response is proportional to the amount of your bound analytes. So a typical sensogram, so on or off rates, that is will be a K on or the K off can be determined from the sensogram, and so this is your on rates where the binding is happening, and then it is off rates and determined by the ratio of the K off by K on. So number 1 you can see is your baseline, 2 is your association, 3 is your steady state, 4 is your dissociation, 5 is regeneration, and the RU represents your resonance units. So this sensogram is composing of your 5 phases. So you can see that one is your baseline, then is your association, then your dissociation, in the steady state, and then regeneration. So regeneration is done where your surface chemistry is again back and can be reused for your other things. So this of the 5 phases, the initial phase is your baseline, and running or flow buffer is used to condition the sensor surface and check for any sensor system instability. So that if there is any instability in your sensor system or not, so it checks it first. So it is crucial to have a flat baseline because any drift, injection spike, and high buffer response is the indication that the system should check and clean. Standard running buffers, PBS or something like this. So second phase is your association. Analytes begin to bind to immobilized ligands. Whatever ligands you have immobilized, it will try to start beginning, and then it is indicated by the initial sharp rise of the SPR signal in the sensogram, and it is ideally a single exponential curve. Steady state phase occurs at the top flat portion of the sensogram where the net rate of bound analytes is 0. And then the dissociation phase begins with analyte solution is replaced by wash buffer, which causes you specific bonds between the analytes and the ligands to break, then represented by the downward sloped curve after the steady state phase. Lastly, your regeneration phase consists of flowing a low pH buffer such as glycine in order to obtain the same SPR baseline signal such as the beginning of the experiment. It is important to establish a steady state baseline signal to indicate that the sensor system is free of bound analytes. So this is your, I think you are clear with that what is your off rate, on rate, and you can determine the KD and then the association, steady state, dissociation, regeneration, and the baseline. So baseline will give you an initial system check that whether just there are any signals. There's a flat line. There's no analyte is getting. So there's no instability from the system point of view, from the sensor chemistry point of view. So then whatever changes in the resonance shift, what we were explaining, what we are getting is just because of the binding of the analyte, uh, binding of your analyte to that particular ligand, and that's why we are getting that particular things. Okay. So this is the KD. So this is your 5 phases of the sensogram. So I think you have gone through understanding of that how the sensogram is. So this is one example. If you want, you can go through. So this gives you one real live experiment of a protein heparin interactions. Yes. So here you can go through that how they have done the functionalization of the whole system method highlighted. So and I think now we were pretty much clear that for the plain glowed surface you need a highlighted thing we can immobilize. So whatever you are immobilizing, that will be your ligands, and then you can follow the analyte to identify, and then SPR, the shift in the resonance units, you will be getting 5 different phases. One is the association, steady state, dissociation, and the regeneration. So the whole surface, OEG, then how they have done self-assembled monolayer measurement of protein, immobilized using previous buffer, which will be very resistant to non-specific binding. So you have to first be very sure that it is not having any non-specific binding, and have been extensively characterized in terms of areal density of procedure. This approach also allows you to control the surface density of streptavidin, and hence attenuated ligand immobilized by simply controlling the molar stoichiometry in the plasma clearing and all those sensograms, and then you can analyze this. So you can go through it. Then another is here for protein-protein interactions at the surface of an optical biosensor. So this is kind of an setting up of the things. So here you can check recently available means of determining equilibrium for biomolecular between immobilized ligands and the soluble ligand molecules. An optical biosensor ligand immobilization on the CMD matrix, and that extent was activated by N. So you can see that using EDAC in its solution, following activation, mixture was replaced with PBST. So for immediate immobilization baseline response on the biosensor was initiated by the attribution of the ligand to the cuvette. ligand direct measurement of bound ligand, kinetic analysis of your interaction profiles, and all. So you can go through it. So what is your stoichiometry for HSA, binding to immobilized anti-HSA, and everything. So again, just to give a brief, so for you to help you to analyze, understand that how we will be interpreting this sensograms, and this again you can see that is the baseline, the absolute response, the association, the steady state, the dissociation. So which part you will be looking at for the dissociation, which part you will be looking for your association, which part you will be looking for baseline, which where you will be looking for the on rate and the off rate. So you can understand here. So here it will say that what data can you obtain from an interaction. Binding, does the interaction partner bind to your target molecule? Specificity, to what extent does an interacting partner cross react with other molecules? Concentration, how much of a given molecule is present and active? And kinetics, what are the risks of association and dissociation? And then your affinity. So what is your, so again just to interact, repeat, iterate it. So it allows you to perform analysis of molecular interactions in real time when polarized light strikes an electrically conducting surface. At the interaction between two media, this generates electron intensity waves called plasmons. So when your polarized light strikes an electrically conducting surface, so that is your gold any this kind of sensor surface, at the interaction between two media, electron change density waves called plasmons, reducing the intensity of that specific angle known as a resonance angle. So you need to have an electrically conducting surface, and your polarized light should reflect, should be there, and resonance angle proportional to the mass on sensor surface. So here you have seen that the target interaction, so you can just to go through it also.
BioCore systems utilize surface plasmon resonance, or SPR, to detect and quantify binding between two molecules in an automated and highly sensitive process, as the SPR detection principle relies on changes in mass and allows you to analyze interactions in real time without the need for labels. This is true for any size of molecule in a pure or complex sample. Using SPR, you can study many different aspects of an interaction. These include affinity. How strong is the interaction? Binding kinetics. How fast or slow does the complex form and decay? Concentration. How much of a given molecule is active? Specificity. How specific is the interaction? BioCore SPR systems have three core components that are key for generating high-quality data with excellent reproducibility and precision: the sensor chip, the microfluidic system, and the SPR detection unit. Samples and reagents are held in removable racks and are delivered to the sensor chip by a microfluidic system that uses a very low volume of the sample, a few microliters. Additionally, the microfluidic system supplies the sensor chip with buffer from the buffer bottles and delivers waste liquid to the waste bottle. The operation of the instrument and the data collection and evaluation is handled by intuitive software. Let us show you how the components work together. A glass slide coated with a thin gold film makes up the sensor surface. For most applications, dextran matrix covers the gold film and acts as a substrate that molecules can be attached to and provides a hydrophilic environment for the interaction. Other matrices can be used to attach specific types of molecules. The specificity of the surface is determined by the nature of the molecule attached to it. The sensor chip is docked into the BioCore instrument, and the microfluidic system is primed with buffer. Next, the ligand is injected and attached to the sensor chip using a capture-based or covalent coupling approach. During analysis, the other binding partner, the analyte, is injected from a microplate or a vial. The microfluidic system delivers it free in solution over the sensor chip surface. Biocor systems use the phenomenon of surface plasmon resonance to detect biomolecular interactions as they happen. SPR causes a reduction of the light intensity reflected at a specific angle from the glass side of the sensor surface. As molecules bind to the sensor surface, the refractive index close to the surface changes, altering the angle of minimum reflected intensity. The change in SPR angle is proportional to the mass of material bound. The result from detection of change in refractive index allows you to monitor binding events of the interaction as complexes form, associate, and fall apart, dissociate. The interaction is displayed as a sensorgram, with the binding response on the y-axis plotted against time on the x-axis. Since light does not penetrate the sample, analysis can be performed on colored, turbid, or opaque samples. From studying the shape of the sensorgram produced, you get information about molecules' binding characteristics, including affinity, kinetics, concentration, specificity, epitope binning, comparability. This means that in a single SPR experiment, you have now obtained a wealth of information about your sample's binding properties, which helps you understand the dynamics of the interaction or to quantify your analyte. And all of this information is acquired without using labels.
Okay, so what samples is spared? It does not require any labeling of any of the interactor. You can perform measurements on complex mixtures such as cell culture supernatant, cell extracts, as well as your purified reactants. Sample is sample. How is data displayed? Sensogram is a plot. So this is your sensogram. What data, binding, specificity, concentration. The sensograms about the interactions. So few examples. Let us look at the different examples. Okay. Fundamental interest in all of the biological reactions, association constant, dissociation rate, affinity, your terminology, Ka, Kd, Kd inverse, Kf, Ri, Rmax, what is maximum analyte binding capacity of the surface, and your offset, the avidity, multi-cycle, single cycle, parallel kinetics. Okay, so you can go through it. So this is your theoretical ligands. So what suitable immobilization levels can be calculated in advance from the relative molecular weights of your analyte. So remember this concept and this formula. Okay, so this you can go through it. Okay, so this is your ligand immobilization level, theoretical maximum analyte binding capacity, molecular weight, interaction, stoichiochemistry. Okay. The suitable ligand levels in your practice. Then the ligand attachment workflow. In resonance unit, so go through it for understanding the technicalities and all the technical terminologies. Then the sample concentration range, experimental formats, the channel 1 multi-cycle kinetics, single cycle kinetics, 2D kinetics, workflow and your settings, association times, dissociation time, mass transport considerations, multivalent analytes, heterogeneous liquid, evolution, choice of blank cycles, statistical parameters, heating is acceptable or not acceptable. So you can get through all of this here. I'll just share it once again. So you can go through all this. So hopefully, so this week, these were the major points where you need to have your analysis of interpreted sensogram. What are the different kinds of sensor chips? What kind of sensor chemistry, surface chemistry you would require for what kind of interactions? How we will be measuring the analyte concentration, binding affinity, and what are those things that we will be measuring. These are the few points that and then the surface chemistry sensors, and then the interactions and the sensograms, understanding of the sensograms, and then how to identify that how much it should be the molecular maximum binding capacity of the basis of the molecular weights of the ligands and the analytes and everything. So hopefully this is done right. So if you have any doubt, you can ask.
म्हणजे इधर है भाई, क्या बात है शांत बड़ा घूम रहा है। ठीक है। अरे कल क्या तू फ्री है बिजी है? क्या बोलूं काम है? तो गौतम करके हैं प्रोग्राम। मैंने दरवाजा खुले